LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 6 o'clock, the Home Secretary has set out the government's plans to reform the asylum system as she faces backlash from Labour MPs. The measures will include returning refugees to their home country if it is deemed safe. Most will also have to wait 20 years to apply to settle permanently. Despite division within her own party, Shabana Mahmood says she is seeking to unify the country.
I know the country we are. We are open, tolerant and generous. We are the Greater Britain that those on this side of the House believe in, not the littler England that some would wish we would become. These reforms are designed to bring unity where others seek to divide.
BBC Chairman Samir Shah has reassured staff that Donald Trump has no basis for a defamation case. He says the corporation is determined to fight against a lawsuit over the edit of a speech he made in 2021. Agency workers in Birmingham have voted to join striking bin staff. The Unite Union says the walkout over pay and jobs could last well into next year. And we're being warned overnight temperatures could drop to as low as -10 Celsius this week. A cold weather health alert has been upgraded to amber for large parts of northern England. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 22 points at 96.75. The pound buys $1.31 and €1.13. LBC weather, a cold night with a band of rain moving across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, a low of -4. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. It's 6 p.m. Now, Tonight with Andrew Marr.
Good evening. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, today laid out the most radical plan yet to remove refugees' rights to stay here permanently. It'll take not 5, but 20 years to win settled status. And as soon as a country is deemed safe, asylum seekers from it will be deported straight back. Mahmood's package of measures includes the right of the state to seize assets, including jewellery from migrants, ending what she calls Britain's excessive generosity to them. It's a crunch moment for this government, because lots of Labour MPs hate these proposals. Performative cruelty, the politics of the gutter, stop scapegoating, it's racist. But Keir Starmer has made it clear that the numbers coming across the Channel constitute a national emergency which has to be tackled. From the point of view of Labour, all the wrong people are cheering tonight. Tommy Robinson celebrated the news saying, "Well done, patriots." Nigel Farage said the Home Secretary sounded like a reform supporter. Perhaps most ominously of all, Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, said she wanted to be helpful. Let's be real. This, today, is a massive victory for all of those who waved English, Scottish and British flags outside asylum hotels, and for the politicians and broadcasters who cheered them on, and all of those around the country who said to pollsters they were going to vote reform. The so-called Overton window, the limits, if you like, of the acceptable, have well and truly shifted. Well, that's how a democratic or a plural society changes direction. The question now is whether Keir Starmer comes under such pressure from his own party that he U-turns, drops or waters down today's plan, or even ditches the Home Secretary herself. Personal opinion based on nothing more than instinct, but remembering his changes of direction on benefit cuts, winter fuel payments and income tax. If he does, he is finished as Prime Minister. In a moment, we're going to hear from the former Foreign Secretary, now usually working on humanitarian crises from a New York office, David Miliband. But before we do, let's listen to Shabana Mahmood herself.
The country has been heavy. 400,000 have sought asylum here in the last 4 years. Over 100,000 people now live in asylum accommodation, and over half of refugees remain on benefits 8 years after they have arrived.
And I'm joined in the studio by David Miliband now. David, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Andrew. Nice to be with you.
Nice to have you here. Your organisation, the International Rescue Committee, is set up to help people affected by conflict and pressures in this country. So how do you react to today's announcement?
I think that it's my duty, both as the leader of a humanitarian organisation, but also as a British citizen, to look behind the headlines. You've read out some of the headlines. I want us to look behind the headlines. It's very, very important to me that the basic rule of the Refugee Convention of 1951, which says that no one should be sent back into danger, is upheld. As I understand it, the Home Secretary is saying she's determined to uphold that principle. Now, you've then got 2 or 3 critical issues. One, what's the speed of processing? We know from our work around the world that actually fast processing of asylum claims is essential to sustaining order in the system. Second critical thing, those who are given permission to stay, you want them to be successful in this country. You want to integrate them. Those who don't speak English should learn English. People from Sudan, which is the world's largest humanitarian crisis, most of them speak English. People from Afghanistan, less likely, second biggest group of people coming over. Thirdly, for those who are not allowed to stay, they shouldn't stay. And those basic rules need to be followed through. Now, we can get into the detail, and I'm very happy to do that. And what I'll do when I answer your questions is bring the evidence, both from the war zones that people are fleeing from, because I tell you, it's horrific out there. I was in Sudan myself just 2 months ago. But also, I'll give you the evidence from the work we do in the United States and in the UK for successful integration.
So this is very interesting. Somebody representing an organisation which represents refugees around the world. You think when the Home Secretary promises to bring order into the system, she is essentially doing the right thing?
We've always said that it's wrong to say that the choice is between compassion on the one side and order on the other. It must be right that a smart system treats people humanely, follows international law and domestic law, and ensures that there's order to the system. I'll give you one example of that. Fast processing of cases ensures that you have more order rather than less. And it takes far too long to process asylum claims. If you're coming from Sudan at the moment, you're very likely to be given the chance to stay. That's right. And the other countries, Afghanistan, Iran persecutes minorities there. Those are people who need sanctuary.
So people listening to this and hearing the Home Secretary be very, very tough sounding in the House of Commons should not expect, therefore, that asylum seekers will cease to come here because the push factors are so intense.
Well, the push factors globally are very intense. Britain, I think I'm right in saying, we're the 5th in the European League for people coming to claim asylum. Germany has about 250,000. Last year, France, a country more or less our size of population, 158,000, 159,000, UK around 100,000. So we're 4th or 5th, but there's global pressure. You know, I think, that there's 125 million people around the world displaced by war and disaster, both inside their own countries and beyond. Most of the people who cross a border are in poor countries, not in rich countries. But those who are coming here, as I say, we're 5th in the league. It's right that we have a system that is orderly, that is fair to people who come here and people who live here, and ensures that there's benefit for Britain. Because I also want to say this. The history of refugees who've been granted the chance to live here and then stayed here is that they know...
Your own family.
Well, I don't want to... But as it happens in my family, but they know the cost of war. They know the value of freedom. They become unbelievably patriotic about it.
When as I say, you can see things from the side, the perception of the refugees. And I want to talk, by the way, about Sudan later on. But do you also understand why so many British people here who can't get decent housing, can't pay the bills at the end of the week or the month, look at the way that asylum seekers and other migrants here are treated by the state and are angry?
I totally understand that British people, including myself, want to ensure that our immigration system and our asylum system, which, by the way, are not the same thing, that they work properly for the benefit of the country. That's absolutely right. And people have had, look, there's been, 15, 20 acts of parliament on immigration and asylum since 2000. I mean, we've had a lot of legislation, and they want to see a system that is orderly, that's fair, that's humane, and that's effective. That's absolutely reasonable.
Labour MPs, not all on the hard left, as it were, are in many cases deeply worried, deeply angry about this, and we're having phrases like performative cruelty, it's borderline racism, we must stop scapegoating. Do you have sympathy for those positions?
Well, I don't know, I don't want to overclaim for my friendship with Shabana Mahmood, but every time I've met her, she's a serious person, she's a devoted public servant, she's a politician who is seeking to do the right thing. I'm not going to, I don't know which, you've read out some quotes, I don't know who they're from. What I'm saying to you is, this is such a serious issue, let's look behind the headlines. And that's I think, the right role that I can play.
When you're putting together this kind of package, I'm sure in the Home Office or anywhere else, there's always a danger of going slightly too far. What do you think about the proposal the state should seize the jewellery of migrants?
I'm totally against that. I mean, I don't know. I hadn't. That's one of the headlines I haven't seen. But the look,
everything except wedding rings.
We're talking Afghans. We're talking Sudanese. We have operations in Afghanistan, in Sudan, Eritrea. These are countries where people are spending their last 10p in desperation to get on a boat. Now that is, they're flogging everything to save themselves and their kids. I just want to say one other thing which we haven't mentioned yet. We've always made the case, one of the reasons that people end up in boats is that they have no other options. In other words, you need a safe and legal route. There was a issue under the previous administration here where I think it was Priti Patel at the time was Home Secretary. She was in front of the Select Committee and they said, well, if you're in Afghanistan today, how do you get to Britain? There is no legal way to get to Britain. I heard that Shabana Mahmood has said she wants to establish safe and legal routes. That's why I think it's important we look behind the headlines, because that's important. I can guarantee you, just think about it, if it was you or me, if we had no option other than to escape through a people smuggler, and that was the only way to get out of Afghanistan, you'd do it.
You mentioned, I think, first Sudan. There's something strange going on here because we both know what's happened in Gaza has been horrific, and there's been a vast amount of debate about it in Britain and in the United States. What's going on in Sudan has been, by an order of magnitude, much, much worse, and almost nobody around the world seems to be talking about it. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's complicated. There's 30 million people in humanitarian need in Sudan. It's a country in northeast Africa. It's on the Red Sea. It's got a 500-mile border with the Red Sea, so it's significant in global politics.
The multi-sided civil war.
Well, that's one. The total population, 45 million, 30 million in humanitarian need, 3 million refugees in South Sudan, in Chad, in Egypt. It was a civilian government 6 years ago. A revolution against Bashir, the former dictator. But the brutality of the civil war that's been going on at the moment has been fueled by the fact that every single neighbor of Sudan and countries across the Middle East are backing one side or the other. You're right to say it's not just two sides, but there are two main sides. It's been in the news in the last 2 weeks because the capital of Darfur, which is older listeners and viewers will remember, was the site of terrible massacres in the 2000s. El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur, has fallen in the last 2 weeks to a group called the Rapid Support Forces. Why has this not got the attention it deserves? I think it's complicated. There's fatigue about the amount of crisis, and there's a sense of, oh my God, can anything be done? Having been there myself, we have 400 people working for us in Sudan. They're Sudanese people. Humanitarian effort is way too small at the moment. There are lives to be saved, that's essential. Secondly, the flow of arms is an absolute nightmare into that country. Thirdly, the diplomatic effort has been too weak, including when there was a civilian government there. Finally, we've got to guarantee safe passage for civilians to get out of El Fasher. There's up to 200,000. We don't know where they are. And we've got to get safe passage for humanitarian aid workers in. Otherwise, what we've seen at the moment is only the tip of the iceberg.
All right, I'm going to come back to the nub of the political argument here, David. There will be people listening to this show right now who will say, terribly sorry for all the people out there, but we don't want them here. What do you say to people like that?
I say to them that we should play our fair share in solving the world's problems, because if we don't, those problems will come to us. It's a fundamental argument. It's not saying abandon your self-interest. I would say it's part of our self-interest. And our role as a country that tries to tackle problems rather than ignore them has stood us in good stead. That's actually the way that we build our own security and our own prosperity. We can't have a divorce from the world. We're paying enough price for them.
Are you worried about this government, for instance, cutting the foreign aid bill?
I oppose that, definitely. I know that these are tough times. It's very difficult. But there's no question in my mind that there is benefit to Britain from us being engaged globally, including through the foreign aid budget. Now, I would also say the amount that we spend on ourselves massively outstrips the amount that we spend abroad.
Yeah. Let me move to an analogous but not the same subject. You gave the Isaiah Berlin lecture, which I heard last night, very interesting. And in that you said that, referring to the kind of the wave of populism across the West, there was a danger that we are starting to become rather like the people that we are opposing, like the autocracies, like the Russians, like the Chinese. In other words, we are beginning to mirror and to mimic our opponents.
Well, it's chilling. There are more autocracies in the world today than democracies. 91 versus 89. I mean, that is chilling. If you think that...
And that's a change, isn't it?
It's a massive change. I mean, there was a wave of democratization in the 1990s. Until 2005, the number of democracies was growing. And we've seen a wave of abandonment of democratic rules. Also, in democratic countries, the power of the state is getting stronger, and it can be oppressive of people. And you see that, what they call democratic recession around the world. I think that's something that we should treasure our democracy. We want it to work better. We should remember that it protects our rights. But you've got a massive debate going on in the US, where I live at the moment, about the power of government to take people off the streets, about the power of the government to instruct the judicial system in how it works. It's a live debate about the health of our democracy, about the way in which our democracy delivers for people. And I think it's a debate worth having.
So that means that liberals have to stand up and be counted at the moment.
1,000%. We've got to treasure our liberties and hold on to them.
And the other thing you said that really struck me was, you said, I think the most important sort of domestic issue for a lot of people were these mobile phones, were the smartphones in their pocket.
I didn't bring mine into the studio. I'm less addicted.
I've got mine here, but they are extremely addictive.
Yeah.
You've got teenagers. You're particularly concerned about children, both in school and out of school, and these things. Would you like to see them banned for, say, under 16?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a whole...
You'd like to see them banned for everybody, under 16?
Under 16, I think that... Well, under 14, I think there's research about this, because you've obviously got issues to do with how kids can stay in touch with their parents if they're out and stuff.
Okay, but tell people why.
Because all of the evidence is that social engagement is going down, that danger is going up, that vulnerable kids are being preyed upon. And those are really serious. There's a man called Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. He's written a very...
He's been on the show.
He's been on the show. Well, there you go. I didn't hear it.
He has.
But I mean, speaking to someone who's a parent, my kids are a bit older now, but I think it's what they get access to. There's two things about it. One, the dopamine hit is so much better than anything else they get. So much more instant gratification.
Yeah. We're talking about smartphones here, let's be clear.
Yeah. But secondly, I think that the range of what they have access to and what invades their brains is worrying. We need to...
And it eats away at concentration. I worry that not only is AI becoming cleverer and cleverer year by year, but it's making us stupider and stupider.
Well, I'm not sure about that. You see, this is what's difficult. This revolution that's in our hands gives us more power than ever before. The danger is that it disempowers us. I want us to seize the opportunities of it. You can do so much more. You're so much more productive in all sorts of ways. You can keep informed. You can keep connected. The danger is it disconnects us, and that's my worry.
Let me turn back to the situation here. You went, I don't want to cause PTSD, but you remember the TB, GBs and all the rest. You've seen Labour governments struggling in the past. This one is having a heck of a time at the moment. Do you have any kind of thoughts or advice for them from the outside?
Well, I think that they've got a big majority. They should focus on being a good government. That's the absolute thing. I know I'm a policy guy, so I suppose you could say I would say this. But in the end, it's about substance, it's about policy. Every successful government is a cause. And the government needs to define its cause and then pursue it, because I think the public will respect them for doing what they think is right.
And there are a lot of Labour MPs over a few hundred yards away who want to get rid of the Prime Minister. What would be your advice to people plotting a coup?
No, focus on being a good government. That's the absolute key.
And that means delivery on policy. That means what we've been hearing about today from the Home Secretary. That means welfare reform. That means all the things that you've been talking about in the past.
Well, it's got to mean the full agenda, because we know that this tech revolution that we're talking about, it's ripped up the social contract, the economic contract, and the political contract. It's ripped them up. And we need to rebuild the social contract, the economic contract, and the political contract. And that starts with a government that defines its cause, that uses its time productively, that focuses behind the headlines, not on the headlines.
Now, there's a ritual part of these interviews, David, where I say, David, are you going to come back into British politics? And you say, oh, Andrew, no, I'm not. And I press you, and then you say no again. Should we just skip that bit?
Why don't you replay it from the previous, then you'll save yourself some time and get on to your next guest.
We'll skip it now. David Miliband,
right,
thank you very much indeed for coming
Andrew.
in. Coming up, one of our reporters has been exploring Denmark, more specifically the Danish immigration system, to see what exactly the new reforms brought in by the Home Secretary have been modelled on. But the time now, 6:20.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
Why is there delay?
Straight to the point.
This government is unravelling everywhere you look.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
How can that make sense to anyone?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
Do you ever feel like getting back under your duvet in the middle of the day? Ferroglobin is a great-tasting liquid formula with iron, which contributes to the reduction of tiredness and fatigue and normal formation of haemoglobin. Ferroglobin from Vitabiotics at Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
The congestion charge helps to reduce traffic in central London. To ensure it remains effective while incentivising the switch to electric vehicles, from the 2nd of January, electric cars will be charged a 25% discounted rate of £13.50 rather than the new daily charge of £18. To receive the discount, electric cars must be registered on AutoPay. Further discounts are available for other electric vehicles. Search TfL AutoPay. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics. With over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Waitrose presents 3 for 2 on chilled party food.
Kelly, meet everyone.
Hi, nice to meet you.
8 guests, 1 host who knows exactly what will bring them together.
Food's ready.
Starring #1 king prawn toasts with crispy sesame seeds, soft polar bear bao buns, bursting with hoisin veg filling, and meltingly tender Wagyu beef mini pies.
Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected lines of stores, subject to availability. Prices may vary in Channel Islands, Little Waitrose and partners and concessions. Cheapest item free.
Tonight with Andrew Marr. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app.
6:22. Let's get more on Labour's asylum plans and how they've gone down with Labour's backbenchers. I'm joined now by LBC's political correspondent, Aggie Chambre. Aggie, I saw a count of the people who'd come out against these so far, and it was relatively modest. It was 18, 19, 20, that kind of number.
That's right. And I mean, we've had people on the record, that 18, 19 number, being very, very punchy. People like Nadia Whittome saying the government's pursuing policies of the far right, Stella Creasy, Tony Vaughan too. And in private, there are other Labour MPs, and not necessarily the usual suspects, who are very, very worried too. However, I think the sense that I've had from speaking to a lot of people today is that, as they describe it, silent majority worries that if they do not do something, and something big, on the asylum policy in the country, then, and I'm quoting a sort of senior Labour MP here, something worse will come in its place, suggesting there wouldn't be an asylum system at all in the UK. So I think lots of Labour MPs are keen to try and make this work if they can, but they still instinctively feel uncomfortable about it. Others suggesting maybe the bark is way stronger than the bite. There were questions today about whether this would get through Parliament, obviously referencing what happened with the welfare vote earlier in the year.
But your sense is that there isn't an enormous revolt brewing right at the moment?
I don't think so. So I asked somebody on the left of the party and they said, oh, it'll never get through. And then I asked a few more people and they said, it will definitely get through. There are question marks over aspects of it. For example, what was briefed to The Sun overnight, that asylum seekers would have their jewellery confiscated to pay for accommodation.
I was talking to David Miliband about that, and he said he was against that. It was ridiculous. But I'm beginning to get the sense that was over-briefed and that there may be a U-turn on that. Do you get that sense?
It's really interesting. So there was a minister out this morning, a Home Office Minister, Alex Norris, who sort of, it seemed like, it's not going to be a wedding ring, it's not going to be a family heirloom, but yes, jewellery might be confiscated. And now Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary's just said in the comments, that's not going to happen. Your jewellery is not going to be confiscated in exchange for accommodation costs. And actually, I was speaking to people today who said that's got to go, who said broadly, fine, we're uncomfortable, but this bit has to go, absolutely has to go. So it could be a U-turn, it could be that it was just overbriefed. I actually suspect it's probably a bit more of the former.
And let me ask you a little bit about the position of the Prime Minister here, because he's had a miserable week last week. There are lots of MPs who who want him out, and I suspect some of those people who hate this know that if he U-turns on this, he's finished, but would quite like him to be finished. So want him to U-turn and then get rid of him. On the other hand, if Shabana Mahmood pulls this off and it's successful and she gets it through the Commons and she gets this quite aggressive policy through, then it's probably the best day that Keir Starmer has had for a very long time.
The best day he's had for a long time, but also a pretty good day for her, especially as someone who hasn't been in this job for a huge amount of time and is being talked up as a potential future leader. So I think both things can be true. It'll be good for him, but also good for somebody who may actually be looking at his job and thinking, actually, I might want that too. So I think it is a difficult atmosphere in the Commons at the moment. And I think a lot of people who are worried about the situation and want potentially the Prime Minister to go sooner rather than later, and that is a lot of Labour MPs, do look at this and think, oh, should we try and frustrate this, or actually should we let this go through?
It is either way an absolutely crucial day for the government, I think. Aggie, thank you so much for that. The Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's reforms have been modelled, as we heard earlier on a controversial system used in Denmark, introduced by the centre-left Social Democrat Party there, which has toughened up the country's immigration system, with successful asylum claims in that country reaching a 40-year low. The government recently sent officials to Denmark to see how the policies work, and so we sent LBC's Henry Riley to Copenhagen to investigate.
I think it's important that if people want to live in Denmark, they try to learn Danish.
It's consistently rated one of the happiest countries to live in the world. Denmark is the birthplace of Hans Christian Andersen. It's where Lego was first built. Carlsberg beer is brewed here. It's even where the TV show Borgen was filmed. But it's the migration policy that has got people intrigued. European leaders, so much so that UK government officials have been dispatched here in Copenhagen to find out more, to find out if Labour can make gains with the help of the Danes.
In general, that it has been, you can say, got more under control.
If I moved to another country, I would learn the language where I would stay or live.
And there were just 860 successful asylum applications here last year out of just 2,300. Those are very low numbers. If you contrast that with the UK, the year ending to June saw 110,000 asylum applications. So the numbers are very small, but crucially, they deport 95% of failed asylum seekers. If you fail asylum, you're denied benefits. You do get access to food and drink. Some here say that that is key to integration, but for others, they say it's discrimination.
I think we have room enough in Denmark to take care of people.
I don't think Denmark is very good with migration. I think that we could do better.
Well, to find out more, I'm going to speak with Nilas Heinskau, who's the political editor of Politicking. That's a long-standing broadsheet newspaper based here in Copenhagen.
Basically, what the Danish government has been trying to do is limit the number coming here, first of all. So they've tightened almost all the rules possible. And one of the most important thing is the temporary basis of staying here. So many people who come here have to leave again if their own home country allows it. But also getting your family here has become much harder because first of all, before you can get your family here, you have to turn 24.
95% of asylum claimants are immediately deported. They're held in immigration removal centres. The largest is the former army barracks, Ellenbach, the detention centre. We spoke outside with Rima, a Red Cross volunteer.
They seem quite fine. Like this is supposed to be one of the good centres, you know. So.
Yeah. And what are the conditions like inside from what you saw?
They look fine. They did. There's a school there. There is like a nice cafeteria, big cafeteria. They got a lot of options there. So. Okay. I mean, of course, it's probably different if you live there. I've only seen it from the outside. So.
Yeah. Well, the policy here seems to be a very effective one. The question is, though, whether you'd be able to apply it to the UK. The UK is more than 10 times the size of Denmark. A lot more people speak English than they do Danish. They haven't got the same problem when it comes to small boats crossings, the scale of it that we see in the UK. But clearly it's something worth exploring, hence the government having those conversations. The government here, the the Social Democrats say that it's bought them time, it's bought them space to concentrate on other policies, a bit of respite that I imagine Sir Keir Starmer would very much welcome.
I'm sure that's right. LBC's Henry Riley in sunny Copenhagen there. Up next, President Trump has made a major U-turn, calling on his own Republican Party to vote for the release of the Epstein files. But does this exonerate him in the eyes of the American public? The time now is 6:30, and Amelia Cox has your news headlines.
The Home Secretary has told MPs the current asylum system feels out of control and unfair. Shabana Mahmood has revealed her plans for reform, which would see most refugees have to wait 20 years before being able to apply to settle permanently. The BBC chairman has told staff Donald Trump has no basis for a defamation case and they're determined to fight it. The corporation has apologised for an edit made to his speech ahead of the Capitol riots at the 2021 inauguration. And people in large parts of northern England are being warned overnight temperatures could fall to minus 10 degrees Celsius this week. An amber cold health alert has been issued until 8 a.m. on Saturday. LBC weather, a cold night with a band of rain moving across Northern Ireland and western Scotland, a low of minus 4 degrees.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, seems to have won over an unlikely admirer, one Tommy Robinson. Is that going to help her win the case on tightening immigration rules, or is it going to frighten Labour MPs to death?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
Train to Cambridge and then all aboard the paddleboards. A little bit different, should be fun. Or wobbly, or wet.
The wetsuit's a good look on you, Steve.
Oh, actually, this is very relaxed.
Georgie's up the River Cam without a paddle.
Train home, that was such a laugh. I think I might even have a new hobby. Download the Thameslink Railway app to book tickets and save a third off group travel on off-peak journeys. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Ooh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
How's the business going? We're busier than ever, but struggling to get the staff we need. Recruiting can be such a distraction. We gave Job Centre Plus a try, and they've really helped us out. Really? Yeah, it was dead easy. We got our own employer advisor, Julie, who helps advertise our jobs, shortlisted candidates for us, and let us interview at the Job Centre. We've hired some great people, and Job Centre Plus really took the hassle out of it, and there was no fee. Brilliant. That's straight on my to-do list.
Find out more at business.gov.uk/recruits. Eligibility criteria apply.
Tonight with Andrew Marr. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
6:33, and a big story from Washington now. And isn't there a big story from Washington? Donald Trump has dramatically changed course over the Epstein files, and he's now saying everything should be made public because his party has nothing to hide and quotes, "I don't care." But is this really because he's lost the fight with Republicans, including the firebrand Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene? Is this the first time, perhaps, that Trump has fought his own side and lost? Let's talk now to Katy Balls, the Washington editor of The Times. Katy, great to have you back on the show. Is the fundamental issue for Trump here that he did not have the votes in Congress?
Yes. I mean, ultimately, you have a situation where, as you allude to, it doesn't happen to Donald Trump much, particularly in his second term, but he has not been able to control events, and instead events have almost controlled him. He's in a situation where it was quite clear that the votes were there in Congress, and this is only one step, to be clear, in terms of compelling the Department of Justice to release the files. But he wasn't going to be able to win that vote, and therefore Sunday night he changed his position, I think, in a bid to try and control the narrative and find a position of strength, even though this was far from his preferred option.
So it is still possible that this huge data dump, as we describe it, will not eventually see the light of day, that the department will be able to stop it getting out?
Yes, in the sense that you have the Congress vote, that then moves to a vote in the Senate, And then you'd have to have Donald Trump sign a document. And it's not clear yet from his Truth Social post or the comments from the White House that he is saying there should be a vote in the Senate or that he will sign. Of course, if Donald Trump wanted to today, he could take some steps of his own accord to help release the files. So we don't know if this is a holding measure ahead of a difficult vote or the start of actually real progress towards releasing those files.
And the crucial thing, of course, I suppose, Katy, is that we don't know what's in these files. We don't know how damaging it is for Donald Trump, and perhaps Donald Trump doesn't know either.
No, and one of the things you do keep hearing here in Washington, D.C. is, Republicans, some Democrats will say, well, the files can't be that bad for Donald Trump, surely, because during the Biden era, they had these files, or most of them, and they didn't use them to, prosecute Trump when they were doing other areas. So therefore, if there was really a smoking gun, we would know by now. But yet, you put that with the fact that the White House has been so reluctant to take steps towards releasing the files to this point. And, people just say, well, something doesn't quite add up. What is going on here? And that's why I think there's skepticism even now that we're about to have the release of the files or release files where, lots of things aren't redacted and so forth. I think Trump certainly feels as though he doesn't, if he's going to have to face lots of questions about this, why not start going on the fence? There's Democrats in those files too. And that's what he's trying to do now.
Meanwhile, there's been an awful lot of sort of skepticism and cynicism swilling around, and a lot of the MAGA movement did start with conspiracy theories, particularly about the Democrats and paedophilia, and this sense there's a little group of people at the top of society all protecting each other's backsides and involved in some pretty unpleasant sexual behaviour. And that is, I guess, what is driving people like Congressman Green and others.
Yeah, for members of MAGA, the Make America Great Again movement, this is about transparency. And they have argued for a long time. They've been pretty consistent on releasing the files. Donald Trump did suggest he was for releasing the files. Pam Bondi, his attorney general, said she had the client list on her desk and ready to release, and then later said there was no client list. So you've had a situation where the MAGA base feels as though they've been led a bit up the garden path here. And for many in MAGA, this really trumps Donald Trump. They're not necessarily trying to hurt him. It's just that they think this is more important than preserving Donald Trump's reputation or making things uncomfortable. The problem is MAGA is led by a New York native who in the 90s was part of almost this kind of this party scene, which they now, so revile as the time of the globalists. And I think that's obviously one of the frictions.
And slightly more generally, Katy, are we starting to see the MAGA movement coming apart a little bit? Because there's this issue, but there's also the America First people who think that the US administration, even under Donald Trump, has been too pro-Israel and not, as it were, isolationist enough in some of its foreign policies. In other words, are we beginning to see a few hairline cracks, at least, in this big movement?
We're definitely seeing a few cracks form. And the question is, how permanent, how serious is this? Is it, as some in MAGA say, just good old-fashioned debate, or does it point to something? And I think since the elections earlier this month, where you had a clean sweep with the Democrats doing pretty well in governorship, in the New York mayoral, and also Virginia and New Jersey, you're starting to have figures in the base speak a bit more loudly about their concerns. And yes, you mentioned Israel, but generally a sense that he is too much, Mr. Global, almost a globalist, something Trump went against, and not enough on domestic affairs. So I think that the pressure is rising on Trump, and it goes well beyond Epstein.
And just on the other side, I'm sorry, Katy, since we've got you here, what about Mamdani in New York? He's, I guess, beginning to kind of measure up the curtains in the offices and so forth. Is this going to be a good news story for Donald Trump in the sense that he's got a proper leftist, a proper socialist to go for, and to, as it were, tar some other Democrats with?
So I think there are two schools of thought on this when it comes to MAGA and the Republicans. One is that Mamdani is a dream come true for Donald Trump and the White House, because they can say, look at this socialist in action. If you vote for Democrats anywhere in the country, you might start to get this happening where you are. And that obviously depends how the experiment plays out. And also there's questions of how much power Mamdani has. The other argument is, hang on a minute, Mamdani represents a form of populism to the left for sure. But Steve Bannon and others say populism is the future. So it's more dangerous for Republicans to go up against a party going against the system.
That's really, really interesting. Katy Balls of The Times, thank you very much indeed for joining me. But staying with Donald Trump, an important new development in his titanic battle with the BBC, who is threatening to sue for $5 billion. Now, you'll have heard on this show last week some scepticism from American lawyers about whether Trump would succeed. But he's pushing on, and earlier today the BBC chairman Samir Shah made it clear the corporation would not simply hand over licence payers' money and fold. He told the staff there is no basis for a defamation case, and we are determined to fight this. Good news, I think. Let's talk now to Roger Mosey, the former head of BBC TV News. Roger, great to have you on the show. Do you welcome the chairman's determination to fight rather than fold?
I do, yes. I think it's good that Samir Shah, as chairman, is being firm. But I think it's important to say he has to be firm based on the legal case. There might be a bit of a temptation to play politics now, which is what Donald Trump is doing. But the BBC has to stick to the legal fundamentals, which are that this programme was not broadcast in the US, and it doesn't appear to have had any impact in the state of Florida, which Trump won by a mile, and which is where he is launching the legal action. So the BBC has to stick to those legal fundamentals before it risks having a punching match with Donald Trump.
Of course, there is real jeopardy here, as we both know, because if they were wrong about that and actually the case progressed and they lost the case, or they had to spend a huge amount of money on the legal costs, it's very unclear how that money would be pulled together.
Yes, it's very dangerous for the BBC if it became a case that was winnable for Trump in the US. But imagine the counterfactual here, because Donald Trump doesn't appear to have known about this terrible case. And it was a big mistake by the BBC, but he didn't appear to know about it 10 days ago. And if you imagine that the BBC had broadcast a programme to the United States, it had had a big effect on the election and he might have lost it. In that case, you can see then there's an argument for $5 billion. You can't see an argument for $5 billion if it doesn't appear to have had any effect at all.
And this seems to be a decision, well, I'm sure the decision was taken by the board, but certainly largely by Samir Shah, the chairman. BBC doesn't have any kind of other leadership at the moment. So when we hear MPs saying, no, we've lost two people from the top of the BBC, but really the chairman must go as well, how dangerous would that be for the BBC in terms of its actual, who's running the place, who's speaking for the place?
It would be dangerous. And I think that's why this particular juncture for the BBC is so dangerous. No Director General, no obvious successor. No Director of News, no obvious successor. And Samir Shah, I think, is a very good man. However, the board that he chairs has been dysfunctional. So it's obvious in the last few days that the BBC board has not functioned properly. And therefore you have everything in the BBC at the moment not working. And that's why it's so dangerous for them.
Now, I am a shrewd reporting person, and therefore I strongly suspect that Roger Mosey is not going to put himself forward for Director General of the BBC for the time being, at least. Do you have any other candidates in mind? And can you talk a little bit about how difficult finding the right person will now be?
I think some of the ideas, you're quite right, Andrew, that it's not one for me, but when you look at the field, there are some very good people. Jay Hunt, obviously, who I work with, Kevin Backhurst, now at RTE in Ireland. But, I mean, some people are saying that what the BBC should do is put in the best chief executive it can, someone really to run the organisation and get the organisation right, and then have a Deputy Director General or a Head of News who are in charge of the journalism. So there may be a number of ways of skinning this particular cat. But you've got to have the BBC restored to the best possible position. I thought your New Statesman article last week was excellent because the BBC is worth fighting for, yes. It's also got to be better. It's about issues of competence and leadership as well as bias. The bias thing, in a way, is fixable. That the competence and leadership in a difficult age is really tricky. And that's where the BBC has to move quickly to get it right.
Bless you for that. And to be absolutely clear, the cheque is in the post. Can I carry on with this question of leadership? Because you should explain to people listening that at the moment the Director General is in charge of the entire organisation, and that's Traitors and Strictly and BBC Radio 3, classical music and everything. But he's also Editor-in-Chief. In other words, he's supposed to be the lead journalist at the BBC. And Tim Davie had many qualities, but he wasn't a journalist. How important would it be if you don't get what you want, if you don't get that kind of executive chairman, how important is it to have a journalist at the top?
I don't think it's absolutely essential, but what I saw in the BBC in the last few years I was there was an incredibly good combination of Mark Thompson, who was a journalist, also with experience of running organisations as Director General, and then Mark Byford as Deputy Director General. And there were times when Mark Byford used to really annoy everybody by getting in the way as people saw it and stopping the journalism as other critics would see it. Actually, what he was doing was sweeping for danger, looking for things that might go wrong. And I remember one occasion when the Ross Brand affair happened, when Jonathan Ross and Russell Brand did some terrible things with Andrew Sachs, the actor, in a prank phone call. And at that time, Mark Thompson was really steeled in what he had to do by Mark Byford alerting him to it, getting him on the case, saying it was serious. And you need that kind of system. It doesn't have to be two people or those particular two people. It does need something that means that the DG is not alone and the person responsible for every single thing that goes wrong.
Let's widen this out just one more time, because you've referred to one of the previous scandals, and let's be honest, there have been a fair number of them over the years. And each time people have said, this is the beginning of the end for the BBC, the licence fee will never survive this, and so on and so on. And indeed, the caravan rolls on despite that. Do you think the politics today, where we might very well have a reform government, and Nigel Farage has already said that he would not accept the licence fee, and there might be questions about the Charter as well, make this different? In other words, the politics make the peril for the BBC greater than it's been in the past?
Yes, because you have this internal problem at the moment of management and leadership and who's going to do it. You've also got political challenges from Reform and from others. And then you've got the fact that the licence fee isn't probably sustainable in the long term. I've always thought the licence fee is the least worst way of funding the BBC. But patience for the licence fee and tolerance of it is clearly starting to evaporate. So all these things are happening at the same time. It's a perilous moment for the BBC.
It's a great job for somebody with a remarkable ambition and self-belief. Roger Mosey, thank you very much indeed for that. Up next, one of Britain's greatest food exports, Scottish oats, may be under threat as Britain resets its relationship with the EU. More on that in a few moments, but the time now 6:46.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
At 8, a special business-themed cross-question. But first, do you think Labour's immigration proposals will work, or are they just a hodgepodge of inhumane announcements which will tarnish the name of the United Kingdom?
Ian Dale at 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or our new LBC app.
Amazon has increased funding for employees to £3,000 a year every year for career development. Like Juliet, she's now a trained technician. And to her, the sound of machinery in need of repair reminds her of how far she's come. In 2 years, she's landed her dream job, providing her with valuable skills. That's up to £3,000 every year for career development at Amazon. Eligibility conditions apply.
How's the business going? We're busier than ever, but struggling to get the staff we need. Recruiting can be such a distraction. We gave Job Centre Plus a try, and they've really helped us out. Really? Yeah, it was dead easy. We got our own employer advisor, Julie, who helped advertise our jobs, shortlisted candidates for us, and let us interview at the Job Centre. We've hired some great people, and Job Centre Plus really took the hassle out of it, and there was no fee. Brilliant. That's straight on my to-do list.
Find out more at business.gov.uk/recruit. Eligibility criteria apply.
For people living with dementia, Christmas can be confusing, overwhelming, heartbreaking. Families are often left to cope alone. But you can help a family reimagine Christmas. Donate to Alzheimer's Society and you can help provide practical support, expert advice and crucial companionship this Christmas. It will take a society to beat dementia, and we can't do it without you. Search Alzheimer's Society and donate today.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC, tonight with Andrew Marr.
It's 6:48. The former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, accused of personally unleashing her security forces against unarmed protesters, causing many deaths, and against demonstrators during demonstrations last year against her government, has been sentenced to death. She was a figure of towering importance in the history of Bangladesh and earlier in her career saw herself, or was seen by many, as a great democracy advocate. So, what went wrong? Let's talk now to Roli Asthana, the former UN diplomat, economist and associate research fellow at Chatham House. Roli, thanks very much indeed for joining the show. Let's talk a little bit about who Sheikh Hasina has been, because she was Prime Minister for a very long time and her father was effectively the founder, or one of the founders of Bangladesh proper.
That's right, Andrew, and thanks for having me. Sheikh Hasina was the longest-serving Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and her father was seen as the father of Bangladesh and of the Bangladesh Liberation Movement, the Mukti Vahini. And actually, the court that has now convicted her, the tribunal, was set up by him, or by her rather, to address the crimes of, as they were seen, of the 1971 War of Liberation. So she has been a towering figure both in Bangladesh as well as in the region, and power in that country has sort of ping-ponged between the two parties, her party Awami League and the Bangladesh National Party.
And she has cheated death before, because after the military coup, almost all the rest of her family were killed, and she happened to be out of the country and survived, yeah?
That's right. That's absolutely right. And even this time, she has she did get out in quite thrilling circumstances.
She got out by helicopter, I think, and she's now in relative safety in India. So although I said that she's been sentenced to death, that will never happen because she's safe in India.
Yes, she has been sentenced in absentia. And Bangladesh has asked for extradition, especially now that the verdict is in. India has responded with a very carefully worded statement, which is not really saying very much.
Mm-hmm. So it's possible that they will extradite her then, is it?
They're not saying that they won't, but they're not saying that they will. And it's probably currently something that India will not want to take a stand on, at least publicly. They will probably want to play a bit of a long game on this and cite both legal grounds and judicial review grounds as well as humanitarian reasons.
They wouldn't want to send a former leader of Bangladesh to her death, I suspect. Sheikh Hasina's rule, as I said at the beginning, she came in as seen as somebody who was a great supporter of democracy. And by the end, there were massive demonstrations against her, and a lot of people lost their lives in that. I know it's a very hard question, but what went wrong? Why did that happen?
Well, a lot of us who look at South Asia closely had been seeing a contradictory set of trends in Bangladesh. Bangladesh had been doing very well in terms of economic development and human development, actually cited as a...
Poverty decreased under her, didn't it?
Decreasing poverty, status of women, literacy and skills and so on. But at the same time, the political institutions were being hollowed out, and people who were watching it closely were worried about that and have been talking about it for a while. And at some point, I guess the contradiction between the two had to come to a head. And it did in this so-called sort of Gen Z revolution. This was the first of two Gen Z revolutions that this region has seen, as you probably know, because Nepal has also had one recently.
Yes. Well, as somebody who finds Dakar absolutely fascinating, I'll be watching very, very carefully. It's an extraordinary story. Roli, thank you so much for helping us out with it. Now then, one advantage of having my name on this show is that I can very occasionally do a story just because it matters to me so much personally. And so it is time to talk about oatcakes. More than any other product of my native land, yes, including whiskey and haggis, the oatcake is to me absolutely essential. Round or fan-shaped, thick or thin, highland or lowland, knobbly or cheesy, they are as essential as bread. Just a lot tastier. Breakfast, lunch and tea with strong cheese or a dollop of homemade marmalade, I can last on oatcakes for months. But now, as collateral damage in the latest negotiations with the EU about food safety rules, they could be banned. This is something to do with mould and oats, apparently, but it is an utter outrage. And I'm joined now by Tom Bradshaw, head of the NFU, the National Farmers Union. Tom, I don't know if you're an oatcake fan as much as I am, but this is quite a moment, isn't it?
Well, I certainly don't quite have the passion for oatcakes that you do there, Andrew, but it is really important. We may end up being forced to adopt the EU mycotoxin rules. Now, what a mouthful that is. But basically, we live in a temperate climate. If we have a lot of rainfall at harvest, then you get these natural molds, as you referred them to, but mycotoxins that can grow on the grains. And they've been harmless for centuries. But suddenly, the EU have put a lower limit in than we have here in the UK. We haven't adopted that since Brexit, but we may now be forced to adopt it, which could restrict the availability of oats for human consumption.
And that would take oat cakes off the shelf. I mean,
well, there is a risk in extreme situations that could happen. But I think the bigger point here is that we would end up being the rule taker. We would have no choice but to adopt those EU mycotoxin rules unless our government were to push for a carve out around that specific subject. The problem is with the maritime climate that it's not just oatcakes that are at risk. There are potentially other mycotoxins, which in a wet harvest could become problematic as well. So there's bigger challenges here at play.
I can't believe there's bigger challenges than the shortage of oatcakes. But you're talking about other oat-based products, or are you talking about going beyond oats?
Well, I mean, there'd be all oat-based products, but I mean, just the diseases that we can get in our crops if we have a very wet period mean that we've got access to fungicides now that the EU haven't registered. Those fungicides may end up not being available to market just because the EU haven't authorised them yet. We've got herbicides because we have greater weed pressure that, again, the EU haven't yet authorised. We don't yet know whether we're going to be able to continue using those herbicides or fungicides, plant protection products in general, where we've decided to take a different course of action just because we've been faster than the EU have in registering those products.
I have to say, the notion that the oatcake could be so dangerous that it had to be banned is going to turn me into Boris Johnson if I'm not very careful. Can I ask you, however, about some of the wider issues? We're just waiting for the budget, of course, and the NFU had a miserable time after the last budget. We saw all the big tractor protests. Are you getting the slightest hint that the Chancellor might think again about the inheritance tax changes that have so damaged and so depressed so many farmers?
Well, this is a subject that I feel as passionate about as you do about oatcakes, Andrew. I'm afraid that we have been betrayed at the last budget. I think there is now a certain strength in those rural Labour MPs. They have been raising their heads and their voices in opposition to the inheritance tax changes. At the moment, Treasury seem absolutely deaf to what's going on. And it's a pernicious tax. With the forestalling clause that they brought in at the last budget, it meant that the elderly and the terminally ill have absolutely no ability to plan. It's a very targeted and personal tax that's going to end some of those farm businesses. And I just can't believe that it follows Labour values in treating people in that way and trapping them in a policy that they have absolutely no ability to plan to mitigate if they are very elderly or terminally ill. So we still push for change, and there'll be a lot of noise coming over coming days. Those Labour MPs we have worked so hard with them. There's been over 13,000 letters in recent days going to over 635 different MPs. And so the pressure really is on, but the Treasury are the ones that hold the key to the lock. And at the moment, they seem absolutely adamant they will not move.
Well, we'll be watching very, very closely. Tom, thank you so much for joining LBC tonight, and good luck with that. As the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood presents her asylum plans, which have so far been met with a bit of backlash from Labour's backbenchers, I spoke to the former Foreign Secretary David Miliband, who now heads the International Rescue Committee, to ask what he made of the new policies.
If you're in Afghanistan today, how do you get to Britain? There is no legal way to get to Britain. I heard that Shabana Mahmood has said she wants to establish safe and legal routes. That's why I think it's important we look behind the headlines, because that's important. I can guarantee you, just think about if it was you or me, if we had no option other than to escape through a people smuggler, and that was the only way to get out of Afghanistan, you'd do it.
And he was also rather against taking people's jewellery away from them. If you've missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news and opinion. You can put your news categories in the order you'd prefer them. You can pause, you can rewind live radio, and you can listen to a range of podcasts. So download the all-new official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 10 on LBC, it's Ben Kentish. But right now, it's time for Ian Dale.
Thanks, Andrew.
To the British public, the system feels out of control.